So next I'm going to bring up my friend Donald McDonald. We actually met for the first time in Nashville, North Carolina. Retired Chief Bayshore started a program there based off the Gloucester Angel model, and it was really wonderful to meet him and so many other advocates and meet the families that have impacted by something that started in this small town in Gloucester and the ripple effects of that. I saw a webinar pretty recently that you did about stigma and language, and I shared it with my team, and so I'm really grateful that you came in this morning to speak with us today and to share a bit about what you do and yeah, help inform the work that we do. So Donald, welcome up. Yeah.
So much like my peers in recovery, I did not prepare comments. You know, a lot of speaking from the heart. Sometimes that goes really well. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm getting so much better at it now, though, because, you know, I'm speaking deep from the pocket right now. It's honestly my message now is, it's a broken record, but that's okay. We keep on talking, keep on singing with the choir, to the choir. Remind the choir to continue to sing in tune, right? Because folks will forget. We'll move on. We're all in it to win it right now, but time changes, faces change, drug trends change, policies change, and we'll go and forget all of this awesome love and work that we've done over the last few years. We mustn't let that happen. We're working with people. We're working with people. So my name's Donald McDonald. I'm a person thriving in sustained recovery from severe mental and substance use disorders and childhood trauma. 15 years ago, I was in detox. I was hopeless, and I was a burden to my family and a menace to society. I wanted to die. I tried to die. I could not die. It was an unfortunate thing at the time, but here's what happened. I'm going to tell you really quick how I got well. Because I did a webinar. That's pretty cool, and it's getting a lot of traction, right? And I get to holler into microphones, and I have the coolest job on the planet working with rural communities across the country to beef up their community-driven response, however they want to write it and do it with plenty of funding. Awesome job. But 15 years ago, I was in detox. I was a potential statistic. And now, 15 years later, I'm thriving. I'm a social worker. I was a licensed clinical addiction specialist who happened to have a preference for peer recovery support services. So I let that cumbersome license expire and do peer work now. And now mostly, actually, I do macro social work, I do systems work, I do policy change. I try to influence hearts and minds through using that hustle for the powers of good now. Just let that hang out there for a second. The folks that you're helping to find wellness and freedom are some mad, brilliant, and skilled individuals who are going to change this planet. They haven't just been out there, you know, high. They've been out there surviving, okay? So good on you. How did I get well? When that stepping off time came, once again, and there's multiple stepping off times for folks. They come to you, they say, I'm ready, I want help, it's that time. Trust me, they mean it. They mean it every single stinking time. And when I said it once again 15 years ago, and my beleaguered wife and my 4 tiny children on the floor, I was really close to saying I didn't want help, that I was going to go off and embrace my destiny and be alone and die alone and unloved, as I thought I deserved. And I didn't. I said, you know what? I want help. And here's what was readily available to me that very second: immediate access to adequate and appropriate treatment and recovery support services. That gave me the time and space to receive appropriate treatment, co-occurring disorders treatment. It was trauma-informed, and I so very much needed a psychiatric care and psychotropic medications, which is a process itself of growing up in public and finding that right medication. I had that. And then this treatment center was really woke and understood that this isn't an acute care issue, and that it really, you know, even though we know so much about science, it is truly a moral issue. Donald, make a choice now. You know what to do. Go do good. keep your nose clean and be well. They knew that this was a chronic illness, and to protect my investment, to protect their investment, they connected me with continuing care services in my community for primary medical care, psychiatric care. They connected me with outpatient services to kind of step me down and ease me in. I had recovery supportive employment. By dumb luck and privilege, I had an employer that was like, oh man, you've got a problem? I get it. Let's get you off to treatment. Let's save this chair for you so it's here when you get back. HR sends me an email halfway through saying, hey, let me talk to you about FMLA just in case we need it, right? No stress. And 3 weeks into my treatment event, my insurance company says I'm all better after 20 years of what I just described to you of a high problem severity, high problem complexity illness. And the doctor there was like, oh no. So that's dumb luck and privilege once again. He says, we got you. I said, I can't afford you. He says, no, we got you. Okay, that I have to acknowledge that. It wasn't because I wanted it bad enough. It wasn't because I was praying harder than the other lad. It wasn't because, I don't know, it was because I had a pathway of recovery laid out before me that I deserved, but everybody deserves as well. I had a recovery supportive home. I had a family that gave me the space and time to grow up in public, because we don't get well overnight. We don't come out of treatment and we're like, okay, cool, yeah, I was wrong and now I'm right. No, man, for years I was kind of the biggest jerk ever, at least for 2 years, right? It took a while to start to realize that. Family and peer recovery mutual aid, right? I'm working in rural communities where there may or may not be one AA meeting, maybe, right? Much less mutual aid alternatives like Refuge Recovery and Life Ring and SOS and Women for Sobriety and all recovery meetings or Indigenous American talking circles. There's this surging peer recovery mutual aid alternative movement coming forward. I had that well before its time in my urban center. So I was able to find my people. I was able to find my dude. I was able to be separated from unnecessary stressors while I became well. And then I got to be better than well. So about 5 years, 6 years into my recovery, I decided what most folk in recovery are like, I want to be just like my counselor when I get big, you know? I'm gonna be a counselor. And so I decided I want to be a counselor. And because of no criminal justice system entanglements, not because non-arrest diversion was present at my time, it wasn't, it was just privilege and dumb luck once again. I broke the law frequently. I frequently was not caught. I occasionally did intersect, but it didn't stick, right? So when I decided to get student loans, when I decided to go to university, become a social worker, when I decided that I didn't want to be a therapist, but I wanted to be an executive, when I decided I wanted all these cool jobs and meet these cool people, nothing was standing in my way. So this was all laying out for me recovery initiation, recovery management, recovery actualization. There are obstacles at each point as we move along in this process. We can remove these obstacles so that the great truth is that everybody experiencing mental, and that's a really bright light. That's what, I'm grateful for it most of the time, you know? I'm glad it's still there. This is good. I've shrunk I'm digressing. Everybody experiencing mental and substance use disorder has the potential to get well, and then the potential to get better than well. Everybody can have a story like ours if there are not arbitrary obstacles in their way, if they are not receiving inadequate and inappropriate services, and if they're not beleaguered by stigma and the ghost of the moral theoretical model of substance use disorder that is still present. We know more about the brain now than we ever have. This'll bake your noodle. I'm going to say this as an authority, okay? Oh, what? Yeah. So can you hear me now? Adequately? I can hold it up. Push it up. Push it on. Poke it. Poke it, mister. How about this? I'm going to stay right where I am, and I'm going I'm pretend that it's not there. Sound familiar? So, barnacles. This will make your noodle. We know what causes substance use disorder. We know what causes substance use disorder. It's not a mystery. True story? Right? We know the overlapping and complex causes of substance use disorder, the estimated genetic influence, the adverse childhood experiences, the co-occurring mental disorders, right? The early childhood use creating higher problem severity, higher problem complexity, the other social capital that we may or may not have, and the presence of stigma or institutional racism. All these things are contributing factors to substance use disorder. So to prevent substance use disorder, that's a big damn job right there. We're doing good work. We're preventing youth access and youth initiation. We're trying to create policies and cultures that will promote healthier lifestyles. We're doing it. But the transformation of a system where substance use disorder no longer exists is going to take all hands on deck, and it's transforming our country into one that we're all going to be super proud of, and everyone's going to be healthy. So we can prevent substance use disorder. We know how to treat substance use disorder. We know how to treat it. We know about how to address high problem severity, high problem complexity, low recovery capital. We know what methods of treatment are most effective for different individuals. We know which medications are most helpful for folk. We know how to treat substance use disorder like we know how to treat asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. We know this. Don't let anybody tell you we don't know how to treat addiction. We know that people get well. There's a bunch of us who are thriving in recovery, and more of us are emboldened to tell our stories now because more of us are telling our stories now. That's what's up. This is very exciting. I'm so moved by the stories that were told earlier today. I'm 15 years in. I'm in a space where my history is part of my resume. I'm 15 years in. I've got nothing to lose. When people are coming out and telling their stories early on, and they've got added layers of stigma with criminal justice system entanglements, mothers, young mothers, all these added layers, and they're still telling you their story, that's really brave stuff. So we shouldn't get in the way of that. Why have we been asking local law enforcement to respond to the deadliest public health emergency in global history? We talked about this earlier. I'm a cop. This is the deadliest public health emergency in world history. It has exceeded HIV/AIDS in its mortality. It did that. This is it. Well, other than, the plague that knocked out a third of Europe, or even then, I don't know the math there. It was a smaller world. This is it, but we've been expecting you to respond to it. We've been expecting EMS to respond to it. We've been expecting hospital and emergency department staff to respond to it. We've been expecting family members and faith communities to respond to this and use the tools that you have and then blame you for how you're responding to it. That's not fair. That's not fair. So I come before you and I apologize that it was actually my sector who wasn't stepping up. And that was the treatment and recovery sector was not stepping up. And people in recovery were not stepping up the way that they should, but they are now. Systems of treatment and recovery are transforming to make more sense. People in recovery are telling their stories and they're advocating so that other people have the same opportunity for freedom and wellness that they have. That's exciting. So, sorry about that. We'll fix that. And I do that with, I do CIT training with local law enforcement. I train EMS. I train hospital staff and nurses. And I give that affirmation. Thank you. Thank you so much for responding. Let's collaborate, and we'll pull our weight now, too. And we'll all get together and tell systems of care they need to transform, tell policymakers and funders that they need to step up together. So what's standing in our way? How did we get here? And this is where I'm going to kind of, am I doing good on time, Allie? Awesomeness? We're ahead of time. We're doing pretty good. Then I'll slow down for a second. I don't know. Look at me. So what can we do? What we're dealing with is fractured systems of care, fractured and siloed, inadequate and inappropriate systems of care. We're dealing with the deadliest public health emergency in global history. We're dealing with 1 in 7 of Americans experiencing this issue, but only 10% of them accessing appropriate care. It's a discriminatory system. The recovery movement is a civil rights movement. Oh my God, what can I do? What can I do? And my recommendation is do what is well within your power today, all right? And that is changing your language. And this is not a matter of being PC. I'm a war veteran. I'm not a combat veteran, I'm a war veteran. The first war that I was in was the Cold War, right? Where I was in naval intelligence, and I would sit at my position, I'd be like, I'm killing commies, right? That was my thing, and that was the pejorative language I had for this dark empire at the time, killing commies. Well, when we finally did kill off the commies, then we were at war with the Middle East. And then my peers and I came up with pejorative language to talk about the people with whom we were at war. And there was a purpose behind this pejorative language. It was to protect the human psyche so that we could not see those individuals as human beings, that we could do our job, or I could help them do their job. Once again, I was not a combat veteran. During Desert Storm, we said the nastiest things about Iraqi troops. The irony is, the same language we were using to describe the Iraqi troops was the same language that was used to describe the individuals in Kuwait we were trying to liberate. How about that? How about that? So this war on drugs that we are engaged in became a war on drug users. How about them apples? Cool, now we can get a photo where I'm not squinting. Because also, much like my peers in early recovery, I still can't freaking believe I'm standing up here. So take a picture, put it on Insta, right? Humbly, because we're still humble, super humble, but we're celebrating our recovery and we're recovering out loud and we're letting folks know it's not a daily struggle to recover. It gets better and better and better and better. And then we get surprised and surprised and surprised. Back to language. How can we make more opportunities for folks to find freedom and wellness, to transform systems of care to make sense, to eliminate arbitrary discriminatory obstacles to freedom and wellness, to allow law enforcement to get back to defending our civil liberties and keeping the peace, which is actually their job, not treating substance use disorder, the language. So I told you about pejorative language, and it wasn't just for people we're at war with. We use it in this country to protect power structures as well, and also as an expression of fear. There's marginalized folks that we label, and we give them nasty labels, and it's still to protect our psyche, because we're committing discrimination against people. We're taking away people's opportunities to fulfill the God-given right to find happiness and whatever is written into the Constitution, right? We're doing this, but we're protecting ourselves by using pejorative language. But we're not at war, and we're not trying to protect some kind of power structure. We're trying to help our wives and our husbands, our fathers and mothers, our children, our family members, our fellow citizens to find freedom and wellness and become citizens once again. And the language that we're going to use, and I'll just go ahead and put it down there, all right? People who are living within the 12-step community, it is a culture. It is an 80-year-old culture with its traditions, its shared language, its shared customs. It is a culture, and that's a beautiful thing. Just like if there's any Jewish people in here, right? My wife is Jewish, but she's not really Jewish. She's culturally Jewish, but she doesn't practice Judaism. There is a culture within 12-step community, and there is a shared language that they utilize. We don't get to use that language. We have discovered that labels like addict and alcoholic are stigmatizing, and they don't mean the same thing to the general public and policymakers and funders that they mean when we're sitting in a circle and we're drinking coffee and eating too many cookies. It doesn't. So I would even encourage my fellows within that culture on a public level, when you're getting up here and you're talking about the power of your story and you're advocating for change, Maybe consider using language that is one where the general public will understand that you were not a bad person trying to get good, you were a person trying to find freedom and wellness. So don't say addict and alcoholic anymore. Those are labels. They border on pejorative. The pejorative in this space would be words like junkie and crackhead. No, you don't get to use that language. You don't use that language in front of your children. Don't do it. That will maintain the status quo, and that will make it so that we continue to have law enforcement respond to a public health emergency. So don't use pejorative language. Don't say addict, alcoholic. And this is the last one I'm going to tell you about. Excuse me. You want to be proud about what you're doing, and you go home and you talk to your kids, and you're like, "What did you do today, Daddy?" "Well, I helped some addicts and substance abusers." Right? Did you feel that? Or I helped some of our fellow citizens who were struggling with an illness to find appropriate services, to find their community, and to find their purpose in life. People living with substance use disorder, if there's no diagnosis in place, people with chaotic drug use, people with alcohol or other drug problems, people experiencing drug problems, people. Lots of Americans use drugs and alcohol. A few of them have a serious issue with it, and we know why, because I taught you that earlier. They're people. So people living with substance use disorder, people diagnosed with substance use disorder, people with alcohol or other drug problems, people experiencing chaotic drug use, people who use drugs. And for people in recovery, I prefer to call myself a person in recovery. I'm a person in recovery. I'm a husband. I'm a father. My grandson calls me Pop, which is weird, but that's cool. But I'm a grandfather. And I'm a social worker. I'm a veteran. I'm a recovery activist. And I'm a pretty decent friend. And I've got a great job that's purpose-driven life and helping other people find freedom and wellness. I'm a human with depth and dimension. I'm not a label. I'm not a diagnosis. And if we change our language, you're going to feel better about what you're doing, much better about what you're doing. More people are going to seek help because they're not going to hear these stigmatizing words that are really other words that say this is a self-inflicted moral failing. Don't say that. They're going to seek more help. You're going to feel better about what you're doing. Systems of care are going to begin to transform even more and be more appropriate and more effective. And this is going to be a better planet. And we did it all by changing our language. I believe this very strongly. And I encourage you to come get you some. We're in a period of transformation right now where you'll hear a little bit of both going on. And officially, systems are transforming. In North Carolina, we just changed the name of our professional practice board to take out the word abuse from the practice board. I served to advise the city council in Raleigh. We changed it to the Substance Use Advisory Commission. So changes are happening, but it takes advocates, it takes modeling the language, and it takes a belief that language propagates stigma, which propagates negative public perception, which turns into really crappy public health policy. All right, everybody on board? Thank you, Allie. Thank you, board members, for having me and indulging me for a few minutes. And didn't bring any cards, so I'm on social media, #recoveryactivist. Okay.